All right, let's dive into a career that's, well, incredibly impactful on a global scale, but also really personal, Immigration advising. We're talking about guiding people through like one of the biggest decisions of their lives, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we love a good deep dive here. You sent over this treasure trove of resources from RoleCatcher.com.
Mm.
And let me tell you, they are a gold mine, seriously, for anyone who's actually serious about this whole immigration advising field.
Yeah, RoleCatcher really stands out, because they've got this really practical approach. They don't just tell you what an immigration advisor is, which a lot of places do. They break it down. Like, how do you actually become one? They lay it out step by step.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, the real details, let's start with the basics. RoleCatcher, they define an immigration advisor as someone who basically helps individuals, families, navigate the complexities of moving to a new country. Which, I mean, on the surface, sounds kind of straightforward. But I have a feeling, just from looking at all this, that there's a lot more to it.
Oh, absolutely. Way more than meets the eye. I
Uh,
mean, think about it. You're talking about visa applications, residency permits, citizenship requirements. These aren't just forms, right? We're talking about life-altering documents.
mm-hmm.
And then you layer on top of that, immigration law is constantly changing, so an advisor needs to be on top of like every update, every little nuance.
Yeah, they even mention like advising on business immigration,
Oh, yeah.
helping families relocate. So it's not just about like one person. It's about entire companies and families making these huge transitions.
Huge.
Talk about pressure.
Absolutely. And RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that, which I appreciate. They actually highlight the emotional toll this work can take, right?
Yeah.
Imagine helping someone who's, say, fleeing a conflict zone or dealing with a family reunification case.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of empathy and resilience required to handle those situations.
It's like that actually reminds me of one of the sections that really stood out to me. Pros and cons, they have a whole section on it. And they talk about, the incredible reward, obviously, of making a positive impact on people's lives. But they're also very upfront about the fact that this is a demanding job, long hours, potential for honestly really stressful situations.
It's definitely not your typical 9 to 5, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it takes a certain type of person to really thrive in that environment, right? Someone who can balance that meticulous attention to detail
Right.
with this ability to connect with people, honestly, on a human level, often during, like you said, very difficult times in their lives.
Which I guess kind of brings us to like, who is this career right for? What does RoleCatcher say about the actual skills and qualifications you need to break into this whole immigration advising thing?
It's interesting, actually. They emphasize that it's not just for lawyers, which you might assume that, right? But while a law degree is definitely valuable, obviously it's not the only path. They highlight other degrees like international relations, political science, even sociology, they say, is a really great foundation.
That makes sense, though, right? Because you'd need to have a really strong grasp of global systems, cultural differences. I mean, maybe even like political dynamics, just to really wrap your head around all the forces that are shaping immigration policies everywhere, right?
Exactly. And it's all connected. I mean, for example, let's say there's a recent policy change that makes it tougher for skilled workers to get visas in certain countries.
Yeah.
An immigration advisor wouldn't just need to understand, the legal changes. They'd have to look at the global economic factors, the labor market trends. It's all intertwined.
So you're like connecting the dots between like these personal stories, these people's lives, and these massive global shifts.
Right, exactly.
Wow. That must be fascinating and probably really challenging, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually where specialization comes in,
Mhm.
which RoleCatcher talks about. They've got a whole section on these niche areas within immigration advising. So, family immigration, business immigration. They even mention things like investor visas and asylum cases, which I hadn't really considered.
Oh, wow. So you really could carve out like a niche for yourself by becoming like the expert on a specific part of immigration law.
Exactly. Let's say you're really passionate about, I don't know, helping families stay together, right?
Hmm.
You could focus specifically on family reunification cases, become the go-to expert on those visa categories, the procedures, even, the cultural considerations that come into play.
Okay, so let's say you found your niche. You're totally passionate about this work, but let's be real. How does this career actually stack up in terms of, money, salary, and just advancement opportunities in general? What's the trajectory look like?
Well, RoleCatcher, they lay out a pretty clear career progression. You usually start with entry-level roles, right, where you're probably assisting senior advisors, maybe with research, client communication, things like that.
Okay.
But as you gain that experience and expertise, you can move up to managing your own caseload of clients.
Ah,
Eventually, maybe even leading a team as like a principal immigration advisor.
I'm seeing a theme here. And it's not just about like how many years you've been on the job, right? It's about like continuous learning. RoleCatcher really stresses the importance of staying updated on those policy changes,
Yeah,
getting certifications, always expanding your knowledge base.
absolutely. Because remember what I said, immigration law, it's dynamic,
Right.
always evolving.
Yeah.
And they actually call out specific certifications, like the immigration law certification, or becoming a global mobility specialist, which that focuses more on like the business side, the really complex world of international relocation for companies.
Oh, interesting. I mean, that makes sense, right? But it does sound like one of those careers where you never really stop learning, which I can imagine is exciting, but also maybe a little daunting for some people.
Oh yeah, definitely not for everyone, this type of work. But, for the right person, someone who thrives on those challenges, that intellectual stimulation, incredibly rewarding, I bet.
Speaking of rewarding, let's talk about, well, I'm sure this is on everyone's minds, actually landing an immigration advisor job.
Mm.
And what I like is RoleCatcher, they don't just leave you hanging with all this theory, right? They actually give some really practical tools and advice for that whole job search process.
Hmm. And it's not just generic career advice either. It's really tailored to this specific field, which is helpful.
Right. Like they have this whole section, interview prep, questions to expect, and some of these are like, they get right to it. Like, how would you handle a client who's facing deportation? Or how do you stay up to date on constantly changing immigration laws? Which, hello, we just talked about that.
Right, exactly. It's essential. But they go even further than that, which I thought was really cool. They don't just list out potential questions. They actually have, get this, a database of over 120,000 interview questions, including specialized ones just for immigration advisor roles.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot of questions.
Right. And then on top of that, they offer AI-powered feedback on your interview answers.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah. It's like having a personal coach, but AI.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's really like they're not just telling you what you need to do to get the job, they're giving you the tools to practice.
Exactly. Actionable advice. That's what RoleCatcher is all about.
Yeah.
And it's really clear, at least from everything we've looked at today, that this immigration advisor career, it's not a walk in the park. It's demanding, for sure, complex. But the flip side is it has the potential to be incredibly rewarding, on a human level, to really make a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And you know what, as we're kind of wrapping up this deep dive, it strikes me, we've been laser focused on this one role, right? Immigration advisor. But honestly, just exploring these resources, it's kind of opened up this whole bigger conversation about like the world of immigration itself.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
This field, it's really just one piece of a much bigger puzzle.
Right. So to our listener out there, maybe this deep dive has, sparked something. And you're like, that's it. I want to be an immigration advisor. I want to help people navigate this crazy system. Or maybe it's made you think, I want to explore some other things within the immigration world, like advocating for policy changes, working with NGOs, or even just like understanding more deeply those global forces that are shaping migration patterns everywhere.
It's a fascinating field, however you choose to engage with it. And just remember, it's constantly evolving. There's always more to learn, new ways to get involved, and a ton of opportunities to make a difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all the possibilities. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep with us.